When I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a drop popping, pocket, swola, 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 swola.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
Swola, 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 swola.
All right, everybody, back again. It is March 8th, 2021. My name's Ethan. I'm your host. This is the Greeks Gridiron. Trucking along through the offseason. There is not a whole lot to talk about today. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. It has been a very bare bones and nothing really newsworthy type of weekend. I was kind of just picking out things that I thought were worth talking about, trying to put some stuff together for you guys. But I'll tell you right now, a rather slow weekend. I have just about every important person set on notification in terms of just like news leakers and breakers and things like that from around the NFL. They're covering all the college pro days and stuff like that. And literally, my phone was quiet the entire weekend, which is a rarity because I'm usually getting a lot of stuff going on. But I've noticed, especially the last week or so, really starting to slow down. And even when my phone was going off with things, it was, just pointless little stories here and there and little things to talk about, but nothing that was really newsworthy for you guys. But there is a few things we can talk about today. So we'll just kind of jump into the thick of things here. First up, the pro days have begun for the NFL. For those of you that do not know, the combine has been canceled. It is not going on this season how they would normally do it, with going into Indianapolis, bringing in all the college recruits, and then having all the scouts and GMs and everyone in one area to kind of watch them all run their drills, interview them, do all those kinds of things. Instead, a lot of the pro day drills are going to be based off of what they would normally be doing at the NFL scouting combine. So rather than being handled the normal way, everyone's going to be off doing them at their individual schools instead, with limited interviews and things like that kind of going on in the interim while they're there. Kansas State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin Whitewater are coming up tomorrow as the next three schools. It kicked off this past Friday with Kansas, just Kansas itself. And as we kind of roll through the month of March and leading into early April, that's where we're going to really be seeing all the bulk of the pro days. So with the conversation of pro days in mind and a good opportunity to really see what some of these young recruits are going to be able to do going into the NFL, I would like to hear from you guys first with our question of the day. As the NFL draft approaches, who would you like to see your favorite team draft in round number 1? This is obviously a discussion that everyone has every single offseason. For me personally, as an Indianapolis Colts fan, Colts need a left tackle. They just lost Anthony Costanzo this past offseason. He decided to retire after 10 years with the team. Costanzo, literally a solid building block of that offensive line for the last 10 years. He essentially the base as people just kind of rotated in and out. The one real constant player up until the last couple of years when we got Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, Braden Smith, and all of them. Up until the last, I'd say, 3 years or so, Anthony Costanzo is really the only constant NFL lineman we've had up in Indianapolis. So with him being gone, for me, at pick 21, the Colts, I would love to see them select Christian Darrisaw. He's from Virginia Tech. He is an absolute stud, a monster of a human being. He has so much power and so much quickness. And on top of that, he's one of those players that is just constantly willing to finish a drive, whether it's even necessary or not. And that's kind of what you look for in an offensive lineman, someone who's mean, nasty, big. They have the power, but they aren't afraid to finish the plays. That's the other thing. Darrisaw, he's graded really well. PFF put him at 95.6, which is the second highest grade they've ever given a Power 5 tackle. So the way I see it is Penny Sewell going from Oregon, he's going to be gone. It sounds like the Bengals want to pick him up, so we're not going to really probably have an opportunity to draft him. He'll be gone probably within the first 5 picks or so. I would love to see someone like Christian Darrisaw, though, just throw him right into that left tackle position and have him play from there. So again, from you guys, I would love to hear who you want your favorite team to be picking in the first round. What are the team needs? What would you like to see happen? I know one thing as a fan, it feels like you feel like the team needs one thing, and then sometimes it can go completely left field and go somewhere else. I remember a few years back when the Colts had Ryan Grigson. I felt like I wanted to put my head through a wall sometimes watching them draft. Philip Dorsett, we drafted in the first round a few years ago when Grigson was still around, and my God, that had to have been one of the worst picks I could have possibly imagined going into that draft. We needed so many pieces on the offensive line and so many other things to look at. Defensive line was not very good that year as well, and it was just everyone was left with their head scratching, and now Ryan Grigson doesn't have a job in Indianapolis. So, Christian Darrisaw, Virginia Tech. I would love to see the Colts pick him up. Who would you guys love to see? On the topic of pro days, we do have a handful of other schools that are going to be participating in these pro days as we go through. Some of the notables that I've seen. So the pro days are running from March 5th to April 9th. The most notable days for anyone to be able to watch. And if you're curious on how to watching as you get closer and closer to those pro days, if you just kind of do a quick Google search, you should be able to find somewhere. Not all of the schools are going to be readily available, but for the most part, ESPN and NFL Network, they're looking to try and air at least like the big name schools, the ones with lots of players, the players that you want to see or you would expect to see, highlighted at the combine. So they are, there's going to be smaller schools that if you're a fan of one of those smaller schools, you might not be able to watch. But I know that ESPN and NFL Network is doing their best to get a lot of the big name schools. March 11th, you're going to get Clemson in Texas. The 17th is Georgia. Alabama is getting 2 days in the pro days schedule here. They're going March 23rd and then again on March 30th. So they're going to get 2 different days for all the people that they have going. The 26th is a pretty heavy day. Boston College, BYU, Michigan, Virginia Tech. March 29th, another one. You got Duke, Miami, UNC. March 30th is Alabama Part 2 again. You're also going to see Ohio State, Texas A&M. And then March 31st, you got Florida, LSU, and Notre Dame. And like I said, this runs from March 5th all the way until April 9th. You're going to see a lot of different schools. Like I said, there's no real schedule as to who's going to be on TV and who's not going to be on TV. You just kind of have to, like I said, you just have to kind of Google search it. It's kind of unfortunate because when I was looking for it, it literally said schedule will be available as you get up closer and closer to the pro days. And then when I was looking on the NFL Network and ESPN's websites, they weren't even saying what schools that they were going to have. They were just going to have big names and big schools and things like that. So everyone's not going to get an opportunity to showcase the way you'd probably hope to see at something like the Combine, but at least you'll get to see the headliners and things like that per se. But a little disappointed with that. I was really hoping, especially this time of year when I turn on the NFL Network, it's literally just replays of games. So the way I see it is like, what do you guys have that's so important that you can't air every single school's pro day footage at some point? Like, I don't need to watch a playoff game from this past season. It already happened. One thing with just sports in general, unless it's a phenomenal game, is it really even worth just sitting there and rewinding to watch? For me personally, not really. Even some of the bigger games, I don't really care to sit down and watch in its entirety. I mean, I've seen them before. I know what's going to happen. I have the same issue with like wrestling. I'm a big wrestling fan. And do I like to go back and watch something? Sure. But I'm not going to watch a show in its entirety. I'm going to watch like maybe a match that I want to see. And that's like, depending on how long, anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes. And even that's hard for me to just kind of sit through and focus on the whole time. So giving up, 2 or 3 hours to watch a game that's already aired, or even like the condensed hour 15, there's not a lot of content to be putting on right now. I don't see why the NFL isn't jumping on an opportunity to be giving us, whether it's live or just pre-recorded and it's put up there afterwards, footage of, these potential prospects that are going to be in the NFL next year. Why are we not showcasing them? It doesn't make sense to me. Outside of that, though, for the weekend roundup, things that have been going on around the league, one of the bigger things that came out from this past weekend, Alex Smith is no longer a part of the Washington football team. Pretty big stuff. I'm pretty disappointed with how this whole thing shook out for him. I was hoping that, they don't really have anyone aside from Taylor Heineke behind Alex Smith in Washington. He led them to a 5-1 record while he was starting. And granted, he missed a couple of games at the end there with injury, but I mean, is that really to say he's going to be injury prone now the rest of his year? It wasn't even the same leg that got hurt. It was the other leg. So, I mean, it's unfortunate. I personally believe that he should be a starter somewhere else. There has got to be somewhere, some team that, whether it's the Denver Broncos. I know that Jacksonville is going to be picking Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people are saying he'd be a good fit there because Urban Meyer was his head coach at Utah when he was in college. So maybe that's a good route for him to go. I don't know. I think that he could start somewhere. And I mean, there are a few teams that don't really have any answers. And the Broncos are somebody that I keep thinking of. I don't really know if I liked Drew Lock coming out of college, but I just don't know if he's the actual answer for the team. And, Alex Smith could be a good upgrade for them. Again, he didn't have the numbers. He went 5-1 though with the team. Whether you want to attribute that to him or maybe their young defense that they have, I mean, go ahead and say what you want, but the record doesn't lie. I'm a big stats person, but I also can look at something and be like, regardless of the stats, if they're winning games, they're winning games. So yeah, he's no longer going to be there. Alex Smith was quoted as saying that his comeback kind of threw a wrench into what he felt like kind of threw a wrench into the Washington football team's plans. He also kind of felt like he wasn't wanted there. So really unfortunate with how that shook out for him. Best of luck to him finding another job. I feel like it's going to end up being a backup role. And again, a lot of people are saying that Jaguars team is a good place for him to go because he played under Urban Meyer. It'd be a good way for him to kind of help Trevor Lawrence, along the way through his rookie season. I just personally don't think that Alex Smith wants to be a backup. I think he wants to start. I think if he's healthy, he is probably better than, the 5 or 6 bottom tier quarterbacks in the league. If the Jets decide to deal Sam Darnold, he's a fit there. If the Texans deal Deshaun Watson, he's a fit there. The Patriots need a quarterback. I know a lot of people keep linking Cam Newton to going back for another year because Bill Belichick was a big fan of him. If Cam Newton doesn't go back to New England, he's a good fit there. There's a few places I could see Alex Smith go and be a serviceable starter. I would just be shocked for him to just go take a bench job somewhere. Past that, Von Miller, he had a little bit of trouble going on with an investigation stemming all the way back to January 15th. It sounds like the DA officials are choosing not to press charges on him. This is good news for Miller and for the entire league as well because, the Broncos have kind of been on the fence because of injury history with Von Miller. They were stating that they did want to bring him back pending the results of the investigation. So now it seems more likely that Von Miller is going to be back in Denver next season. However, who knows? Von Miller's due a fair amount of money. They haven't actually picked up the option for this year for Von Miller. So theoretically, there's a good chance he ends up being a free agent this year, which would only add to the free agent pool. A lot of people are getting cut left and right. This past weekend, there was a lot of smaller names getting cut here and there. No one of super big, noteworthy mention to bring to you guys. But I mean, a lot of people just getting cut, contracts being restructured, things like that. So could Von Miller be on that list? Definitely. Does it seem less likely now? Possibly. He would be a huge free agent, and I think a huge piece for any team that's looking to solidify that edge. I've brought up Von Miller as someone I'd love to see to go to the Colts as well. We need somebody that's going to replace Justin Houston because he's going into free agency as well. I think Von Miller, if you just stuck him at D-end on the edge there, just strictly rushing the passer because they have the coverage linebackers already. They don't need him to drop back in coverage. Could he? Yes, of course, but they don't need him to. He would be a good fit there. He'd also be a good fit on Tampa Bay if Shaquille Barrett or it sounds like Levante David's probably the more likely of the two to stay in Tampa Bay. He would be a good pickup there if he wants to go ring chase over in Tampa Bay. Realistically, anyone of any name value is worth going to Tampa Bay at this point. But he's someone that could go there. Houston obviously just lost their D-end and J.J. Watt. He could fit in there. So there's a lot of places I could see Von Miller going and fitting into really well. It just kind of remains to be seen whether, the Broncos decide to actually move on from Von Miller or not, or if they decide to, maybe keep him around for another year or so and see how he plays out. And then the only other real big thing of note as far as players go for the NFL, we're hearing a lot of rumors with Zach Ertz. Sounds like he's not going to be in Philadelphia next year. This was kind of brought up a while ago when the Colts were first trading for Carson Wentz. There was a lot of rumors coming out that Wentz and Ertz were almost going to be like a package deal for the Colts, and they were going to bring in both at the same time. Turns out, obviously, not the case. They just went after Carson Wentz. So now teams are reaching out. Mike Silver reported a handful of teams have said something to the Eagles about interest in him, and it sounds like a deal could be done within the next few days. That's a big name going somewhere. He is coming off of a down year. He only played in 11 games, which is a career low for him. On top of that, 36 receptions, 335 yards. He only had a touchdown. Those are all career lows for him. I believe the receptions is tied for career low from his first season as an Eagle when he came into the league, his rookie season. So other than that, he's coming off a down year. Whether he ends up being a good pickup for a team or not kind of remains to be seen. You could argue that his numbers have kind of tanked down because of the quarterback issue that they've had and just the entire structural issue that they've had over in Philadelphia. Whether you buy that or not, I always have a hard time believing great players just kind of tank out. I mean, there was a point where Zach Ertz was considered one of the best tight ends in the league. Now, obviously, you have people like George Kittle and Travis Kelce who are pretty much in that spot perennial every single year. But, I think he still has some talent left. I think if he goes to a team that's built a little bit, so he's not required to be like the number one player, but he can still be serviceable. If he gets a lot of one-on-one matchups, I think he would end up having a pretty good, 40, 50 catch season, 4 or 5 touchdowns, things like that. That would be good for him. But if he's going somewhere that's in just like full rebuild mode, I could see him going to the Jaguars. I don't believe that the Jaguars have any tight end of note from what I'm thinking off the top of my head. I feel like anyone will have a really hard time unless you're from Jacksonville naming a Jacksonville Jaguar tight end. But I don't think they have anyone of note. So going somewhere like that, giving kind of like a reliable pass catcher for Trevor Lawrence could be huge. But outside of that, as far as fits for Zach Ertz, I mean, what other teams could really use him? Just like thinking off the top of my head, the Patriots are another team. I mean, the Patriots could use a lot of pieces on offense. Their defense should be set. They're getting back a lot of players. Their offense is where like the things are going to have to be put together. Looking at the tight end position, they don't really have anybody. So like a solid receiver, someone like Zach Ertz could be good. Kyle Rudolph is also somebody who's been linked to the Patriots. He himself said he would like to go to the Patriots, so maybe that ends up getting filled that way, but I could see Zach Ertz going to New England if Kyle Rudolph doesn't go out there. So a couple of places I could just think of off the top of my head. The Cowboys, if he wants to go to a rival team, but I don't see him getting traded there. That would be something more along the lines of if he gets released, maybe he'd go there. But not a whole bunch of teams, that I could really think of off the top of my head. No, I mean... And again, down year, how desirable is he? I feel like he's going to be a 4th or 5th round pick trade if that's going to be anything for him. I feel like coming off of a season where he missed 5 games and had career low numbers, you can't really ask for a lot from him. So that'll kind of remain to be seen. It just kind of depends on how the whole thing is going to really shake out. And that's pretty much it for NFL news. Like I said, not a whole lot going on in the league. We're kind of just sitting around. March 17th is when free agency starts. There's nothing to talk about in the NFL. Nothing's happening. No big names are being released. I mean, the Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson thing, everyone's just kind of sitting there waiting to see what happens. Could Russell Wilson end up being pulled out of Seattle for a big trade? It's funny because every article I read, it's all just speculation, but as we kind of roll through, Russell Wilson's not really saying much anymore. He did his interviews, and now he's just quiet. And he gave a list of teams for where he wants to go. I know the Bears are like the heavy hitter for landing him. They really, really, really want to bring Russell Wilson in. And Russell Wilson, from inside sources have been saying he's a big fan of what they've got going on offensively there. They have an emerging offensive line, which... I would have to look that up myself and see just how true that number is. I don't remember reading them in the top 10 of any offensive lines in the NFL, and I checked PFF just the other day for an offensive line conversation on something else. But, it sounds like it feels as every single day goes by, he's more and more likely to get traded. People are still saying that Deshaun Watson is not going to be a Texan. He's ready to hold out. And the way I see it with the Deshaun Watson situation is the Seahawks are lucky because Russell Wilson's willing to play for them next season. He's not saying, I don't want to be in Seattle, period, end of story, get rid of me. It's kind of a position where he's like, I would like to be in Seattle if things could, change and get better. Offensive line needs to be worked on this year. But if not, here's where I want to go. Deshaun Watson's just flat out saying, hey, I'm ready to sit out and not play for you guys the entire year. And, that's just going to be, for a team that's trying to rebuild, the last thing you want going on is for, free agents, draft picks, things like that, to see that your number 1 star player does not want to be with you. Because if he doesn't want to be there, why does anyone else want to be there? You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't look good on the Texans' part. I'm very curious to see where that ends up going, honestly. I would love to see Deshaun Watson in another uniform. I would hate to see his talent waste away. over in Houston. It just feels like they have nothing going on. And I know a piece of me as a Colts fan is also kind of just like, yeah, we're just kind of crapping on the Texans there. But at the same time, like, you just nonsense. They got rid of, and everyone's like, oh, well, that was Bill O'Brien. I mean, the Texans still let it all happen. They got rid of DeAndre. They got rid of JJ. I mean, there's just nothing there. What is left in the cupboard in the kitchen to cook with? Nothing. Literally nothing. They have David Johnson, who's, 32 now? I mean, his best years are behind him, and he had a really bad injury a few years ago that really set him back from being as good as he could have been. So, I mean, it's not like it's David Johnson from the Cardinals 4 or 5 years ago. No, this is post-injury, 32-year-old David Johnson. That's like the highlight of that offense right there, and that's a problem for me, So we'll just kind of have to see where the whole thing shakes out with those quarterbacks. I know Sam Darnold is again rumored to be traded as well, so it feels like a giant waiting game with the NFL. Everyone's just kind of sitting there, guns drawn, but no one's really doing anything. They're all just kind of staring there, looking at each other, who's going to take the first shot. Because I feel with the Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson situation, whichever quarterback gets traded, I feel the second one's going to have to be traded for more picks. Because you can argue they're in the same place. Both are top 5 quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, you could argue top 3. I don't think Deshaun Watson's quite top 3 yet. I'd say he's top 5. I would argue he might even be 6 or 7. And then, that's a whole conversation for another day. I don't want to get into that right now. But, whoever gets traded from those 2 quarterbacks first, it's going to cause a trade for the other quarterback to either be of equal or even higher value than that. Because the argument for Deshaun Watson is, he's uber talented, but he's also very young. But if Deshaun Watson goes, they're like, well, Russell Wilson's won a Super Bowl ring, so he should be worth this much. So it almost feels like a massive standstill, and everyone's just kind of looking at each other like, who's going to move first? So we'll see how that goes. And that's it for the NFL news. What else do we have going on? I guess as far as like some league stuff that we have to talk about here, the franchise tag deadline is rumored to be getting pushed back. It's supposed to end tomorrow at 4 p.m. Because of the salary cap issues. It sounds like the NFL is willing to maybe move the date back a few days because they still haven't figured out a solid number for that. I know that the NFL is working with Disney right now for rights to air their games. ESPN and I think it's ABC is the other network they have there. They're doing some big thing with like money deals and whatnot. Amazon's trying to pay like some absurd number in the billions to buy out rights for Thursday night games as well, so they can air them exclusively. So the NFL is like juggling these big money contracts right now, and I think that's kind of what's holding up the process, is they're trying to figure out where all this money is going to come from and everything. If that was already handled, I feel we'd actually have a legitimate number already, but I feel that that's kind of what's holding things on, especially the Amazon deal, because the Amazon deal is supposed to be worth billions of dollars, like multiple billions, not just 1 billion, but like $2, $3, $4 billion to air exclusive Thursday night games. So however that shakes out, I think is going to affect the salary cap number. This Disney thing with the $3 billion or whatever that they're asking for from Disney, because they're such a big company and they want a lot of money for those games to be aired on ESPN. It's just a matter of, do those deals get done now or later, or are they accounting for that? Are they not accounting for that? I think the NFL's hoping that they can get the deals done, and then at that point, they'll be able to use that money and kind of toss some of that into the salary cap as well. So I think that's kind of the holdup on that. So yeah, whether the franchise tag deadline hits tomorrow or not kind of remains to be seen. The Broncos were the first team to hit the franchise tag this past weekend. They tagged Justin Simmons, their safety. So, and on top of that, I know Dak Prescott's potentially going to be tagged. There's a few other people that are going to potentially be tagged. And I feel that, at this point, we should have already heard of some players being tagged. And I think this is why we haven't, because that was also something kind of in the back of my mind, was why haven't players been tagged yet with the deadline being tomorrow? But if the rumor is now that the NFL might extend it, it makes sense as to why. Because if that's being extended, I think that contract negotiations are going to be allowed a little bit longer as well. So we'll just kind of have to see how that shakes out. And then a few potential rule changes for the NFL that I was reading about I thought were pretty interesting. The Bills are offering up a rule change for coaching hires to be held until after the Super Bowl. This is something that I feel has always made sense and should have been changed a while ago, especially with the controversy of, some coaches not getting hired or whatever it may be. Teams are allowed to essentially interview as long as the other teams that they're interviewing from agree to it. They can interview whoever they want. And then if you think about it in terms of those playoff teams, if they're trying to, because that's probably where these hires are coming from, are from contenders, that are in the playoff hunt trying to get themselves to the Super Bowl. It could be a distraction. That's what some teams argue. So the Bills are just saying flat out, nobody can be hired post Super Bowl as far as coaching staff goes, and interviews shouldn't be allowed to start until after the AFC NFC championship games. I think that makes sense. At that point, you just have the last two teams that are in the Super Bowl that are going to be like barred from being interviewed. Interviews will start that week, and then they wait another couple days until the Super Bowl's over to do interviews with them if anyone's interested on the coaching staff of the Super Bowl teams. Makes perfect sense for people like Bieniemy, who should have a head coaching job. I think that this might fix the issue as well. Say what you want about why people aren't getting hired. I know at least one piece of that is teams don't want to wait. And, whether they feel people are fit to be head coaches or not, I'm not going to speak on them. I think that Bieniemy should be a head coach. I think he's a product of the Chiefs just being in the Super Bowl the last 2 years, and pretty much everyone has their head coaching vacancies filled by the time the Super Bowl rolls around. So definitely a rule that I think should be put into place. Roughing the passer could become a reviewable penalty. Whether that happens or not, interested to see how it goes. I know that a lot of people thought the whole reviewing PI was kind of a stupid thing because it never really got overturned. Roughing the passer, a little bit more of a straightforward type of penalty. Very unsure about how that's going to work out because you just have, essentially you have people who are making a call saying, oh, we were wrong on the call. So I don't know. That's just a weird thing. The two things I'm kind of excited for that are being brought up in this owners meeting, the potential OT changes and the 4th and 15 onside kick alternative. So the 4th and 15 onside kick thing has been brought up for a few years now. And it's been shot down every single time. And it's usually shot down because some owners are just purists and they want the onside kick. They don't want changes to the game like this. The one thing about the NFL is they're very, this is our brand and this is how things have always been done, and they don't want to change. For me personally, I would love to see a 4th and 15 or something like that instead. The onside kick hardly ever converts. It hardly is ever a successful attempt. It's like, I believe within the 20th and the low 20th percentages of actually being completed and done correctly. So get rid of it. Give a team with offensive firepower, a 4th and 15 deep shot, something like that to make a play happen. That would be of interest to me. I think it would make the game a little bit more fun, a little bit more risky. And I don't think it's set to be like a replacement either. It's like an alternative. So like the teams have the option to choose the onside kick or maybe go for a 4th and 15. Whether they decide to do that or not remains to be seen. I personally would like it. The other thing that I really, really like, and I think that this is a good topic to discuss, is the potential overtime changes. So one of them is just flat up going back to the sudden death overtime ruling. No, if they kick a field goal, the game keeps going. It's just, whoever scores the first points wins. Boom, bing, bang, boom, done. The other change that I really thought was interesting and I think would be very cool to see play out would be whether or not we do a coin flip, or through the proposed option would be one team chooses the yard line at which the offense will start. The other team chooses whether they start on offense or defense. So for this example, the Patriots in overtime, they choose the 15-yard line for whatever team on offense is going to start at. So the 15-yard line is the starting position for the ball. Playing the Packers choose whether they want to start on offense at the 15-yard line or play defense and put the Patriots on the 15-yard line. You don't tell the teams what they're picking. They just decide, and then it kind of gets thrown together like that. I like that idea. I think it is very interesting. The coin toss thing kind of stinks because it's just a 50-50 toss-up. With the picking and choosing of like offense, defense, yard line, where everyone's going to start, it's a matter of like gamesmanship, and what do you think your opponent's going to do? It creates more thought and less randomness. And I think in a game like football, the less randomness, the better. I want to see decisions made, and I want to see people punished for the decisions they make. That would be really cool because, in a big game, a team takes the risk and they're like, let's just, 50-yard line. And the other team just picked defense because they didn't think that the other team was going to pick such a far forward yard lines. Then suddenly, one team's being punished because, they picked defense instead of getting the ball back, instead of getting the ball first. And then, the other team's starting at the 50-yard line. The stakes are up to here. Like, that would be an interesting concept to see. I think that without sudden death would be interesting. If they go back the sudden death route, which I'm not really a fan of, because then, a team kicks a field goal and wins the game. I don't know. That's just kind of cheeky. I don't like that. I want to see a touchdown scored. I like the idea that the NFL has it set up so that, one team kicks a field goal, the other team still has a shot to keep the game going. I'm a fan of that. But I could see it changing over just because, players are already against preseason games, especially after this past year. They would rather not play any preseason games. The season's probably going to get extended by a week next year. So any reason to get people playing less, I could see them transitioning back to the sudden death situation that they had before back. And I think that changed in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Curious to see where all that goes, but those are some of like the potential rule changes that they got going on. Beyond that though, for anybody who's been following the fan-controlled football league, this has been a little bit of it's kind of like a mini highlight to the weekend, and it's honestly really cool because it's a nice little spot of football in a season where literally nothing is going on in the NFL. The fan-controlled football league just held their Week 4 final week of their first season. It sounds like more than one season is going to be played this year. The way that they're talking about it, it almost sounds like seasons of television and not just an actual season, because they're calling it like season 1. So if that's the case and they're going to have like multiple 4-game seasons throughout a year, that would be something I'm all about watching, and I'm very curious to see how they roll through it. But Week 4 is over. As far as the results go, we have the Wild Aces who topped the Glacier Boys 56-52 in just an absolute wild shootout. Leave the defense at home. Who's going to score last type of affair. It ended up being 56-46 towards the end of the game. So the Glacier Boys kind of fell behind a little bit offensively. They ended up scoring and then putting themselves within a 4-point, difference, but they just were not able to catch up towards the end there. So Wild Aces advanced to 2-2. Glacier Boys dropped to 1-3. The other big thing, the highlight of the weekend, former NFL player Josh Gordon has made his way to the FCF, and he is playing on the Zappers, the same team that Johnny Manziel was on. His signing was announced last week. His release from the Seahawks happened this week. So he is officially a full-blown FCF player at this point, and he was showcasing his skills on the football field. He was able to put up 2 touchdowns in the game. He scored a touchdown on his very first drive, and on the very last drive, game-winning catch of the game. Absolute madness. I have a little bit of like a highlight reel for you guys to see. I pulled right from the FCF's their Twitch page. For those of you that did not know, you're able to watch the FCF through Twitch. It's a streaming platform. It was designed for gaming initially, and it kind of has evolved into more than just video games and has become, at this point, even a sports place to watch games. So I have a little bit of a highlight reel. The Josh Gordon catch is at the end. Take a look at this. It's a quick minute clip and just kind of see what was going on here. Very impressed with what they're doing in this league. I'm excited to see where it goes. This was a pretty big weekend, as again, the final week of the season. Some big highlight plays. One thing you'll notice is that big plays seem to come in chunks here. I mean, this was like a 40-yard play, catch and run for the touchdown here. This put the Glacier Boys up 30-20. The Wild Aces trying to make a comeback, just were not able to. They came up a little bit short. And then they do have a couple of highlights that they're showing from the Zappers Beast game. The Beasts were actually 3-0 in this game. They ended up taking their first loss to the Zappers via the next play they're about to show here, where Josh Gordon goes up big time expiring for the score, giving the Beasts the 32-26 victory. That is Josh Gordon there wearing the number 6, and the entire team running out onto the field, ecstatic on the win. I mean, it's very interesting because some people look at it and they're like, oh, rinky-dink football league. They're playing an arena. It's half a field. It's 50 yards, not 100. In a time where there's literally nothing football related, if you're a big football guy like I am, this is the kind of stuff you're looking for. I mean, quick, action-packed, high scoring, anything can happen. Hail Mary at the end of the game for a score. It's just fun to watch, and the games are only an hour long. They're so condensed and quick. It's like, an action-packed. The fans can choose the plays. I believe a team had like a 5th down option at some point that the fans voted on. Fans have been reviewing plays and things like that for like short line situations. They do so many crazy things, and it's just really fun to get caught up in all the hype. It is really like watching Madden and like participating in real life. It's a very bizarre thing. If you have not checked it out, their playoffs start next week, and I highly suggest you check out the games. I don't 100% know what exactly is going on with their playoff format. There's only 4 teams. It sounds like all 4 are participating. So if that's the case, I would assume it's going to be the Beasts going up against the Glacier Boys as the 1 and 4 teams in the league, and then the Zappers and Wild Aces, who are the number 2 and number 3 team. And Jason, yes, that was an insane catch. Catching that, no time left. There was like, if you saw the defense there, let's pull this back up real quick. Hold on, just so we can take a quick look at that. I really want to look at this again. So I'm going to pull this back up real quick and we'll take another look. Let me see here, full screen this. Let's just take another quick look at this, because the big thing the weird thing about this league is, it's 7-on-7. So you get put into these weird scenarios of seeing things go on where there'll be like nobody even rushing the passer. So we'll go ahead. We'll flip this over here. Take a look at this. The entire defense is in the end zone here. No, one blocker, quarterback throws it deep. There's like 4 or 5 beast players around Gordon for the catch. Like, talk about a play made. I'm excited for Josh Gordon. It's unfortunate what's happened to him in the NFL and not being able to stick around due to, the personal issues, whatever it may be, however you want to look at it. But at the same time, I'm excited that Josh Gordon is able to, put his skills somewhere and be able to play football. Great for him. And what a debut weekend. Score a touchdown, your first drive, and then on the last play of the game for your team to defeat the undefeated team in the league. Like, come on now. You couldn't ask for anything else. But playoffs are up next weekend. Very curious to see how that goes. But outside of all that, that's pretty much all the news I got for you guys. We're about 36 minutes into the show. I'm not going to waste any more of your guys' time. It's Monday. Nice weather is coming. Here in the Northeast, it has been cold. We have been getting snow, but the snow has kind of gone. We haven't seen it in a couple weeks. It's about to be like 60 degrees the next 4 days, and then we're going back to 30-degree weather. New England is a wild place to live in during this time of year, and I'm so excited to get out of the winter and get back to some nicer weather. So get excited, everybody. Other than that, just one more firing shot with the question of the day. With the NFL draft approaching, who do you want to see your favorite team draft in the first round there? Like I had mentioned to you guys earlier, my pick for the team, I would love to see Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech be drafted. They need a tackle. They could throw him right in on the left side there, and he would be an absolute monster for my Colts. I would love to see him go there. So if you have somebody that your team is, if it's the Packers, the Buccaneers, the Chiefs, the Patriots, whoever it may be, whoever your favorite team is, if you have somebody in mind from the college ranks that you want to see your team draft, comment it down below. Let me know what you guys think. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe this. If you enjoy the show, if you're having a good time watching it, you like the content, make sure to do all those things. It really helps me out. This is just a side project for me that I'm doing for fun while I'm in school. But, as the weeks have gone on, I'm having so much fun doing this. It's just something that, if I end up getting a job at some radio station or something like that, this will probably be something I'm still doing off on the side should I have time. But again, that's pretty much it for the show. Make sure you check out the pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're everywhere. I'm probably most active on Facebook and Instagram the most. My Twitter is really just a way for me to get news. I don't really say a whole bunch on there. I don't have much to talk about. I'm just curious as to what's going on with the rest of the NFL world and football leagues that they have going on out there. So without further ado, my name is Ethan. I appreciate you all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will catch you all Thursday, 1 p.m., same time, same place.
When I see you dancing, I'm like, hola, 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 hola. With your move fancy, make me wanna hola, 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 hola. I got your attention, spending that moolah, 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 moolah. I'm a drop popping, pocket, swola, 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 swola.
You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
Swola, 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 swola.